Hey, welcome back to your #1 source for cozy gaming and design content. I'm Nick, and I make videos about things I'm interested in. Today, that's some great cozy games you should be excited for. Also, most of these have demos, so if you want, you can try them out right now. But let's get into it. Cozy Island is a chill little island exploration and farming game, though it breaks from the mold a bit when it comes to the farming aspect. Most farming games take after Stardew Valley, and to a certain extent you can see that inspiration here too. However, the way that the farming is handled is far different, and I think more conducive to a cozy little farming game about farming. The overall loop goes like this. You place down your plots that you want, you plant the seed for whatever crop you want to grow, and throw some water on it. Then, within a good 10 seconds, the crop has fully grown and you can pick it. Then you take the crop that you just picked and bring it to a wooden drop-off bin where you'll get rewarded with the game's currency, turnips. Now, you might note correctly, that loop doesn't sound all that entertaining. But that really isn't the point of the game. The farming is really more of a means to an end. The point of the game is to explore and shape the island that you're hanging out on, and to find cosmetic items to customize your character, as well as interact with the main thing that drew me to this game in the first place, the movement mechanics. They aren't really anything wildly innovative, but they are unique. The feeling of walking around is just really satisfying in a really goofy way, but it's the kind of goofy that doesn't get in your way. While your feet sticking to the ground might sound like it would be annoying, it's really not. It just adds character to the movement and exploration and gives it a bit of a kid's toy vibe, which is helped by the flat, cel-shaded, almost putty-like graphical style, or like Fisher-Price toys. Regardless, though, it's a really nice aesthetic to see in a game, especially one as chill and low stakes as this. The animation is also really great. Everything is made to be kind of squishy and rubbery, which just adds to the kids' toy vibes. It's just a unique style which sets it apart really well from the slew of games which lean on pixel art to get that cozy feel. This game really feels like it understands the fundamentals of cozy games enough to do something new while still being firmly planted in the cozy genre. One of my favorite things in a cozy game is when they do something like this, that sets the game apart from the other games in the space. Now, don't get me wrong, there's plenty of room for pixel art style games, and I personally really love games which choose to go that route. But I also love to see a game like this, where they play with the mechanics to make the experience cozy intrinsically. If you are looking for a calm, relaxing, and fun to play cozy game with satisfying and pleasing mechanics and animation, this is the game for you, so make sure you keep your eye on Cozy Island. It has a cat in it. I mean, come on, how could you not want to try it? But if you're looking for a bit more story and stakes and just a bit of survival, our next game is going to be right up your alley. Miro is a retro-inspired survival light, which sees you exploring exotic worlds to discover what happened to your crew. The basic premise is that you wake up on a mysterious planet after being contacted by your spaceship in orbit. You set off to find your crewmates and figure out what happened to split everyone up. It's a cool little game. Based on what's available in the demo, it's very much focused on walking. There are very long stretches of land between points of interest, and while that's a cool concept, this is kind of my main complaint with this game. And keep in mind, I do think it's a cool game, and I think it might be right up some people's alley. I can see a certain type of gamer spending a lot of time with this game. However, that gamer isn't really me. While I like the sci-fi setting, and I think it's a neat idea to have these alien planets inhabited by genetically unstable man-made dinosaurs, I think the overall loop of walk to place, pick up resource, and walk to next place and repeat isn't really all that gripping to me. Now, there are little bits of story at each location, and if you're the type who likes unraveling a story and deducing what happened based on small open-ended clues left behind, this might be a good game for you. But I think for me, it was just a bit too much exploration and walking sim and not enough of anything else. And don't get me wrong, I'm known to love walking sims. I really love the walking sim du jour, Death Stranding, but the thing about that is that it's not really just walking. There is a lot more to it. And obviously that's a full budget AAA game, and this is a small indie game, so definitely not a fair direct comparison. But my point is that I think between the points of interest, there needs to be a bit more to do. And it doesn't have to mean combat or survival stuff like finding food and water. It can also be something like traversal puzzles or something like that. Just something to add intrigue to the walking sections, so I don't find myself holding forward and looking at my phone. However, all that being said, I still think this is a unique little game that a lot of people could have some fun with. The graphical style, while potentially divisive, I think is cool and evocative, and I like the framing device that you're almost like some kind of robot where every loading screen has little boot messages telling you what's going on. I think the game has charm, and the devs clearly have a vision, and I love to see vision in a game, even if that means it sacrifices something mechanically or commercially. But overall, Miro is a pretty fun time for the right person, and the world and art is unique and interesting, and I love to see games which feel like passion projects. Speaking of which, I think it's time we head over to our next game. My Little Puppy is probably one of the most adorable games I've had the pleasure of trying out. The premise is that you're this little corgi pupper, and you are waiting in heaven for your owner to arrive. After seeing a few of the other doggos reunited with their family in a cute cutscene that made me cry way more than it probably should have for how far into the game I was, your little guy smells his owner's scent, and after being blocked from leaving heaven, you decide to break out with the help of one of your friends. After successfully fleeing the coop, you find yourself falling out of heaven and into a sort of purgatory. But soon after, you find these adorable little forest sprites, which need your help rescuing one of their friends from the halo-snatching monsters that have taken over the place. This is one of the most wholesome and oddly 2000s-y games that I've played in a while. It kind of feels like those early 2000s collectathons in its mechanics. Like, the feeling of moving around the world and everything just feels really good overall, and if the dev was able to iron out some of the performance inconsistencies, this game could wind up feeling really great to play. As is, the only issues I had were that the frame rate was fairly inconsistent, and you could tell when the game was loading more than it could handle because the frame rate would drop rather drastically for a bit before recovering to a more stable but still low number. Given that this is a demo, I don't think that's a huge issue, though it would be something to keep your eye on in the reviews when the game actually does release into full access. Aside from the frame rate though, this was such a fun and relaxing demo to play. You would assume a game about a dog trying to find their human would be a bit of a downer, and I mean, I can't say what the rest of the game will be, but based on the demo, it seems like a very positive and happy-go-lucky approach, which I always appreciate in a game. And the way they dealt with the background cutscenes, I think, was really brilliant, and honestly, a really charming bit of self-expression that I always love to see in games like this. Instead of animating the 3D models to act out the cutscenes, we're shown background info like the first time your little pupper was picked up at the kennel in these really beautifully done hand-drawn cards. The style is very consistent with the vibes of the game, and I think it's a really efficient use of resources. All in all, I think if you're just looking for a lighthearted, wholesome, somewhat collectathon-esque experience, you should absolutely have My Little Puppy on your wishlist. But now, our next game on the list, and this is the only one which breaks from our pattern of offering demos, and that is the reason I'm adding this game to the list, even though it doesn't really offer a demo at this moment, is because I just think it's such a cool concept and I wanted to make you all aware of it. The basic premise is in the title. It's a photography simulator. If you break it down, it's really pretty simple. You walk around and take photos of your virtual environment, and that's kind of it. However, what makes it cool is, well, the fact that it exists. I mean, I haven't seen anything like this before, aside from photo modes in games, and that's entirely different. And as a photographer, I think it's a really great idea, but also the fact that the places that you can visit are real-life places. Now, I'm not actually sure if they're, like, real exact replicas of those places. I suspect not, because there's some video game tomfoolery which wouldn't really work in a real-life national park, but regardless, they are beautiful environments full of things to take amazing pictures of. One of my favorite maps so far has to be the Japanese Inari Gates. This is a place I've always wanted to go to take photos at, but the barrier that is travel has meant that while I may want to, I likely won't get there for a long time. And then, even if I did go to any of these places in real life, one of the major problems photography nerds like myself run into is the amount of people at these particularly photogenic places. Now, don't get me wrong, I love walking around locations that aren't known for their particularly photogenic views, and there is real value and skill that comes with being able to find the beauty and uniqueness in everyday scenarios. But at the same time, I still want to go get photos from these well-known places. And something I think pretty much anyone who goes to those locations will understand is the struggle to get a good photo without people in it. This game solves that though. Every location you go to is just you and your camera. Even if it's a more touristy place with clear indications that it's intended for tourists like map boards or trail markers, they're always completely empty, which is like a dream come true for a lot of landscape photographers. So that alone is a really big draw to this game. You get to explore these very well-known and desirable places without interruption, time pressure, or any need to Photoshop tourists out of your shot. But there is also the fact that it's a virtual environment, so you can mess around with it as well. So instead of having to come back in 5 hours when the sun is at a position that might be better for your shot, you can just play around with it and find the best lighting. Or maybe you want more fog, or you want it to be snowy, but not that snowy. Any scenario you might want, you can create. Now, these abilities are locked behind a bit of a tutorial. You have to find a certain amount of predefined shots before being able to mess with those features, and it's things like that which remind you that you are, in fact, in a game. But there are small collectibles and various things to interact with, which all benefit you in some way. But at its core, it's really just about walking around and taking nice photos wherever you might see them. And that brings me to the camera mechanics. I think they did a really great job with the camera interface. While I do kind of wish it was a bit more computer friendly, the cyclical nature is very similar to the experience of having to scroll through all the settings options on a real life DSLR from like the 5D Mark II days before touchscreens were super common. Overall, I think they did a really great job capturing the experience of using a camera and the feeling of walking around aimlessly looking for good scenarios. And I was pleasantly surprised to find myself leaning on a lot of the same techniques and strategies that I use when I do photography in real life. So while it's not a perfect simulacrum of real life, I think it absolutely gets the job done. But that is probably my one complaint that I do have about this game. A game like this really relies on extremely high fidelity graphics, and while it's very much more geared towards landscape photos and things like that, which don't really require super high detail in the subject, I would love to have the ability to do some macro shots of things like flowers, which is something I do a lot when I'm out with my camera. But the fidelity of things like bushes and flowers just isn't high enough to allow for that. Now, to be clear, while I do take issue with the graphical fidelity, I would much rather they make this game now with the limitations that they have, and potentially a sequel later on to improve on things they couldn't quite do in this iteration. I think we are close enough to be able to get some fairly realistic looking shots, and I can't wait to see how it improves from here. And the fact that they save full-size PNGs of the photos that you take to your drive means that even if it's still fairly obvious that it's a video game, you can still take your shots into whatever editing software you like and mess around with them, which I think is really cool. And I think that kind of sums up my general thoughts on this game. It's really cool. It has some gamey elements, which I don't think I hate, but I also wouldn't mind not seeing. But on the whole, it's a really great representation of photography, and I think if you're even casually into photography, you should absolutely check this game out because it's a really cheap game for what you're getting, and it does a really solid job replicating the experience of photography. Some things I'd probably want to see in this game in the future would be like more variety in cameras and a little bit more of a free exploration of cameras, because as it is, you kind of find the cameras throughout the locations. They're just kind of sitting on the ground. I kind of like that approach, but I also would like to see just kind of a menu that you can kind of just pick your camera from. That would be nice. But that's kind of all that's kind of just the developer's opinion. I mean, obviously it won't replace going to those locations, and I still absolutely want to visit these places and take real photos there, but it's a fun experience, and I really enjoyed wandering around these locations, taking in the views, and I can't wait to see what they do next, because I think this game could go in a lot of really cool directions. But I think that's just about all we have time for in today's video. I hope you enjoyed hearing about some new games. Let me know if you added any of these to your wish list, or if you straight up bought them. And if you do try them out, make sure you let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Or if you want, you can head over to our lovely Discord, which is full of wholesome, cozy gamers like you who are just dying to talk about the games they love. But don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss a video. You're also more than welcome to join the channel if you like what I'm doing here and want to support me even more than you already are. But regardless of if you do or not, I really appreciate you just watching these videos. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and as always, happy gaming.